Ollie, German lawmakers then going from words to action, pushing through this vote. What are the next steps? How significant is this?
Tom, this is a complete bombshell for the sort of European economy and for the sort of Germans more broadly in this sort of paradigm shift. I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, and it's gone, as you say, from theory into reality. We have a conservative German government, the CDU, the party that brought in the debt brake in 2009, that has basically scrapped it and ushered in a new era of just absolutely mammoth spending. I mean, we're talking about the scale potentially of spending here. Remember, there's a 500 billion euro infrastructure fund. Then there's unlimited. There's no cap on what they can spend on defense, and they've also really widened what the definition of defense and security means to mean a lot of different things. So we're talking potentially to the order of €1 trillion over the next sort of decade or so of spending from this German government. That dwarfs, the spending that was done in the Marshall Plan, that dwarfs the spending that we saw in after reunification in Germany in the 1990s. And when you look at the impact that this has had in the market in terms of sort of euphoria, yes, we've seen it in the bond market, we've seen it in the equity market, but I was just speaking with the head of KKR's infrastructure investment, who happened to be in Berlin yesterday, saying that basically a lot of the deals that they're now cutting, it's not in the United States, a lot of them are starting to come into Europe, and that there's a real euphoria that this is going to sort of unlock something significant in Europe. And we look at the sort of what the economists are saying in terms of what it could mean for growth. We're talking potentially adding 2 percentage points to growth in Germany on average a year over the next decade. It'll also have some trickle-down effect to the rest of the European economy because, of course, the Germans can't build all of the infrastructure on their own. They're going to need more capacity. Could also be inflationary. But really, Tom, this is really a paradigm shift. And in terms of the timeline, it got through the Bundestag yesterday. It will go to the Bundesrat, the upper house, on Friday. And this could be signed into law by the president of Germany by Friday.
So that's the time frame. Ollie, you're sitting there in Brussels, of course, keeping your finger on the pulse of what the European Commission is thinking in terms of the response. We're getting the white paper later today. To what extent is Germany's efforts a catalyst for the rest of Europe?
Well, I think that, unfortunately, it's going to dwarf potentially what the rest of Europe can do, right? The EU Commission is trying to come up with a lot of different proposals. Many of them, though, lack kind of new money, right? There's a 150 billion euro loan. That was one of the things that the Ursula von der Leyen announced a couple of weeks ago. There's about sort of making fiscal headroom in order to allow borrowing from a national level under the EU's rules. But as we've talked about a lot, Tom, the limiting factor for many of these countries is not the fact that there are EU rules. They break the EU rules all the time. It's the fact that the bond market, basically, interest rates are too high and they have way too much debt. But listen, we heard from Ursula von der Leyen yesterday. They gave us a little sort of feeling of what we're going to hear from the EU Commission a little bit later. Have a listen to what she had to say in Denmark.
Europe is ready to step up. We are ready to take control of the change that is inevitable. Because we cannot afford to be pushed around by history. And that means acting now is a must. Acting big is a conditio sine qua non for speed, scale and strength by 2030.
And we should just say that she's speaking there in Denmark. Denmark's policy on defense has been, their stated policy on defense has been buy. That is, again, as we're saying, not something that can be replicated across the Eurozone and across the EU. This is a sort of bloc where there's a lot more sort of fiscal strain on many of these countries that are making very difficult political decisions about where money needs to be spent into the future. You think also about what Ursula von der Leyen is watching. She's sitting at the sideline like every other European leader while Donald Trump is on the phone with Vladimir Putin, where there's a White House readout where the sort of the Ukraine war, is not necessarily a footnote in the conversation, but is not seeming to be the main part of the conversation. So this, again, and the other thing that's brought bear, they don't want to be sort of passengers in this sort of story of history. What the Europeans have learned that basically in this Trump era, if you don't have a military, you don't have a voice, and if you don't have a voice, you have no influence over the sort of course of affairs in a Trump sort of a dominated world.